Welcome to the Dreaming and Doing podcast. I am really looking forward to today's conversation. I am here with Stephanie Skryzowski from 100 Degrees Consulting. Stephanie and I actually met through a mastermind business coaching program that we were both doing. And one of the things that I really love about Stephanie is that she is a very big dreamer. And so today she is going to be talking with us about the power of consistency as it relates to working towards our really big goals. So welcome, Stephanie. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Melissa. I'm excited to chat with you.
So before we dive in, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and the work that you're doing with 100 Degrees Consulting.
Yeah, so 100 Degrees Consulting provides fractional CFO and bookkeeping services to nonprofits. And we have an agency. We've got about 16 employees of amazing nonprofit finance people that serve our clients really, really well. And I've been doing this and running this business for about 8 years. And before that, I spent about 10 years working inside the nonprofit sector, working for nonprofits, most recently as the CFO of about a $15 million organization. And as I was, sort of thinking about what the next step in my journey would look like, I thought, well, I think there are smaller nonprofits out there that still need this type of work that I'm doing, this financial management support, but maybe they can't afford a full-time CFO, or maybe they don't even need somebody full-time. So I'm just going to give this a try. And so I started researching nonprofit organizations that I was personally really passionate about their mission and what they were doing. And I was cold emailing. I would look on their website. I would see if they had a CFO listed. And if they didn't, I would look for their CEO's email address and then just start sending emails saying, listen, I love what you're doing. I'm a CFO. This is how I can help you. Are you interested? And that's how the business began. And so, we're talking about consistency today. And so I think that was like the first step in a consistent action that has really driven a lot of growth and success, was sending those emails, because I didn't get responses from like the first batch of 20 that I sent and then the first batch of 40 that I sent. I wasn't getting responses every day, but I just continued to take that consistent action. Even when people started saying, yes, we are interested in having you as our part-time CFO, I still kept doing it. And so that has been a big part of how the business has grown over the last 8 years.
Yes, I love that, Stephanie. So talk with me about how you have more recently been finding consistency helpful in working towards some of your big goals.
Yeah. So over the past couple of years, I've really been thinking about how can I form partnerships with places or organizations where a lot of nonprofits are hanging out. So I've been thinking really strategically about the growth of my company and thinking about our business model. And our business model is, we bring on new clients and then we add team members, and we bring on more clients and we add team members. And that's fine. That has been served us really well over the last 8 years. And that's like sort of slow and steady, consistent growth. And I like that. But I was also thinking of like, okay, well, how does this business scale? Like, how do we get in front of more nonprofits, more potential clients at once? And so thinking of this partnership idea and specifically working with organizations like nonprofit associations, sort of like a membership association for nonprofits, or foundations, which are, large organizations that give money to nonprofits. So they have a lot of nonprofits in their network. And so the consistent, action that I've been taking is just it's more cold outreach, honestly. It's really researching what I think would be smart partnerships for us, and just doing a little bit of outreach and doing that consistently. And so, for example, I was trying to build relationships with state nonprofit associations, and there's a nonprofit association in every single state. And so last year, I sent out a personalized email to every single state to somebody there and just saying, hey, this is what we do. I'd love to, maybe provide education to your members, that kind of thing. A handful of people responded, but most didn't. And so then in terms of consistency, I did it again, not like obnoxiously. I waited like a long time. I mean, some of them even a year, and reach out to maybe a different person who could be a good fit. And so now more people responded. And I've really seen that momentum like start to build for us, because some of the relationships that we built last year, now we're also doing things with them. We're sort of expanding our partnership this year because I've been proactively communicating with them, reaching out. And now we've got new partnerships with some organizations this year. And I imagine that would expand next year. So everything with consistent action, and this, specifically, but I think with all consistent actions, like it stacks on top of each other. So I feel like consistency helps you get not just one win, but like those wins continue to stack and stack and stack. And I think that's where the power of consistency just comes in, really. It's not necessarily a quick win when you're doing something consistently, which can be hard and a little bit discouraging sometimes, but it's like that. It's like the compounding interest is basically, it's like the power of compounding. So yeah, that's one example of something I've specifically been working on where I'm seeing consistency really start to pay off.
Yes. And it's interesting that you use that as an example, because that's a great example of one of the things that I really appreciate about how your brain works, just having spent some time with you and kind of seeing the ideas that you generate, right? Because this idea of consistent action, like small, consistent action, that sounds small, consistent actions. And yet I know that what you're telling us right here is actually a really big thing, right? Because you're thinking bigger. Mm-hmm. Right? I hear you saying I started out with individual clients and maybe one-on-one work and growing those like individual relationships with maybe one organization. And so now you're taking small, consistent actions with these bigger organizations to form even bigger relationships. And so I love that example. And I was reading an article yesterday for a podcast episode I was recording this morning about that very topic, about forming partnerships, but professional partnerships and the value in that. And so it's just really interesting that that's exactly what you're doing today.
Yes.
So I have a question about that, because, I'm thinking you're sending out these cold emails and like you said, you're not always seeing immediate results. How do you handle moments of where you're just feeling discouraged? Like, I feel like I'm doing all this work. I'm going through this time-intensive process of identifying contacts and their emails, and I'm sending these emails, and maybe I'm not immediately getting the responses that I wanted. How do you handle moments of feeling discouraged, or whether you're questioning, is this even working?
Yeah. So it depends on my mood for the day, I think. But like, I would say there's, two different directions I might go when I'm feeling like I'm not getting the results. And honestly, like, I know we're talking about work right now, but I'm also thinking about, fitness, because I feel like consistent actions in fitness and your sort of health and wellness journey, like this is so similar. But I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm feeling like just so discouraged, I'm not seeing the change I want to, I take a break. Sometimes it's like, you know what? I just cannot send another email today. I'm done doing this research. I just need a minute. And so I step back and maybe I don't do anything for a week, and I set a reminder on my calendar, or I have it in my project management system. Like, I'm going to come back to it. I know I will, because I've built in the systems in the background to help me stay accountable to this consistent action, which I think is huge and allows me to take a break knowing that I am going to come back to it. Like, I'm not breaking the habit. It's not going to go away forever, but I'm taking a break. So I would say that's one thing, is that I just like, all right, I'm going to take a minute here. This isn't working. I feel discouraged. I'm not going to spin my wheels anymore right now. So either take a break, Or the other thing that I do, because I have this method, like this consistent action, and specifically like reaching out to organizations to get to know each other, it has worked in the past. And so I remind myself of that. And I think about, what does my track record look like? And maybe I had to send out 200 emails to get my first 4 clients as, as my company started. But now I look at, how many organizations have we served? How many clients have we served? Look at how big the company is. Like, this works. So like, just stick with it. It's a numbers game. And so I think actually too, with any sort of consistent action or habit, a lot of it is a numbers game, and you're going to win, but you have to put in the effort. Actually, I was just rereading Atomic Habits for like the 3rd time right now. And I was just reading the part about where I forgot, I don't know, I'm going to totally butcher this. There was some study or something. It was like a photography class. And
Yes.
you've read it, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so I think like the photography class, the professor divided the class into two parts, and half of the class they were graded based on the quantity of photos that they produced during the semester. And the other half of the class was graded based on the quality of the photos. So they had to submit one photo, but it had to be like the best ever. And the result was that the group that actually had to do quantity, the best photos of the whole class were in that group, because it was just a matter of practice and experimentation and consistency and, trying new things and shifting. Whereas the half of the class that was responsible for just one photo, and it had to be the highest quality photo, they were so focused on that they didn't try other things. And those were like really mediocre results. And so if anybody listening has not read that book, like, read it and then listen to it and then read it again and then listen to it again. Like, you could just keep going with that. But anyway, backing up to your original question, I either take a break or I remind myself of my track record. And then, I love that example from Atomic Habits. It's like, it's quantity so often. And I think that goes along with what we're talking about for consistency.
Yeah, and I love it. And I've read the book and I've heard that study, and I think the message and the takeaway from it can be so impactful. And yet, even though I've heard it, just listening to you say that right now, I'm reminded of, how I can still fall back into old patterns or ways that some perfectionism shows up, and I want results now, and I might not like learning the hard way by doing the quantity. I don't like that, because I want the results now. Mm-hmm. And just reminding myself about that study, I think, can be really helpful.
Yeah.
So what are some specific habits or strategies that you have been developing to help yourself be consistent with small steps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so much, and again, I'm thinking way beyond just this one particular project that we're talking about. I've also been, I think we were talking about this at our masterminds, but just on a sort of fitness and wellness journey. And actually, thanks to your suggestion, I did hire a personal trainer back in August, and so I've been working with her since then. And so, anyway, anything that you're going to do consistently or building a habit, something for me is like making sure that the systems are set up to help me be consistent, basically. So like with the work project I mentioned and all of this outreach and partnership building, I have it in my project management system, so that every single week, a new task pops up that's like, reach out to 10 organizations. And so I check that off. And once I've done it that week, it repopulates for the next week automatically. And so it's always top of mind. I'm not going to forget about it. And so it's not something I have to use brain space for, which is like huge. How can we make these consistent actions, these habits, really easy for ourselves? And so using a software tool that I'm already using for other things is one way that I have done that. And then, again, sort of parallel thinking about my fitness journey and thinking about wellness and this personal trainer, my appointments with her go into my calendar. And I am starting to look at them, or not starting to, I have really looked at them as like, that's what can't move. other things can move around it, but that's the appointment that cannot move. I think we all like in our calendar, sort of in our head, there are some, some appointments or some meetings that we're like, oh, that one has to stay. But like, okay, let me shuffle some other things around.